In the first episode, we're going to take a quick shot at defining Rails and the core principles that drive it. We'll start with Ruby. Ruby is a dynamic, reflective, object-oriented, general-purpose programming language, which has come to drive a very popular framework known as Rails. Rails defines itself as a full-stack web application framework optimized for sustainable programming productivity. Before delving into Rails head-on, it's often useful to understand the driving principles behind the framework, which will then help you understand some of the reasons behind why it works the way it does. We're going to be discussing two major principles, the first of which is COC, or Convention over Configuration. You may have heard that there is a lot of magic involved with the Rails framework. In part, that is true, but more so, it is based on a philosophy that we follow. Convention over configuration means that a lot of things in Rails are preset for you, all the way from folder structure down to specific libraries to parse JSON and everything in between. At first, this might sound like it's a bit restricting. After all, as a developer, freedom of choice is typically something we all strive for. However, as you develop more web applications with Rails, you'll come to note a few things. Rails is an opinionated framework, as in it provides a sensible default for most things that you may want to get done in a web application. It, however, certainly does not restrict you from customizing your stack the way that you want. You simply have to reconfigure part of the options to allow for it. That being said, as you develop, you'll find that the majority of the tech libraries and choices that are recommended are pretty solid because the founders of the framework have built countless production-grade web applications. The second thing you'll notice is an eventual increase in efficiency for you and your teams because of the strong conventions that exist in Rails. Since the project structure, general libraries, and programming patterns are all done in a certain convention, the benefit is your developers don't have to waste their time setting things up and configuring their servers all the time. When you understand and know how one particular Rails project works, you will likely understand 80% or more of any new project that you encounter. The second guiding principle behind the Rails framework is known as DRY, or don't repeat yourself. Essentially, every piece of knowledge must have a single, unambiguous, authoritative representation within a system. You'll find that in many places as possible in Rails, developers try to write logic only in one place and attempt to reuse that piece of work in as many places as possible. This helps to reduce bugs and makes the code much more maintainable and extensible. So with these two guiding principles in place, try to see the rest of the lessons with them in mind. For example, the largest complaint I usually hear from people starting with Rails is how opinionated it is. They wonder, how do I deviate from this convention as soon as possible? I would encourage you to just go through with the conventions to start with and see how it does help to increase your efficiency and overall developer happiness.